Good morning. This meeting is being called to order on this Tuesday, June 25th, in the Town of Oakville Council Chambers. Welcome to the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee meeting, which is open to the public. Members of the public may also watch the meeting live stream on oakville.ca or the town's YouTube channel. Delegations who are joining the meeting virtually are encouraged to pre-register with the Clerk's Department by noon the day before the meeting. Delegations who are attending the meeting in person may also register at the meeting. Today there are 2 registered delegations, and additional delegations will be taken from the floor for today's meeting. Delegations are reminded that they have 10 minutes to speak to an item on the agenda. Agenda and materials are available on oakville.ca under Town Hall, Agendas and Meetings. You can also find the new online delegation form in the Agendas and Meetings section that can be submitted electronically online should you wish to delegate at a future Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee meeting. We have 2 discussion items and 3 information items on the agenda today. And I wanted to add that any applicant or member of the public wishing to speak further regarding an issue on the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee agenda for today may register for the Planning and Development Council at its meeting on Monday, July 8th at 6:30 p.m. when the recommendations from today's meeting will go forward for final consideration by council. We have 3 regrets today.
Yes, we do have 3 regrets: Drew Bucknell, Carrie Colborn, and Susan Hobson.
Okay. The second item, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Today? Okay, none. We have a confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Any issues? Motion? Okay. Motion.
Madam Chair, you need to move the motion.
Yes. Motion by Jonathan McNeese. All in favor? Okay, the motion carried. That the minutes of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee meeting of May 28th, 2024 be approved. Motion is carried. Discussion item number 4.1, notice of intention to demolish 324 Spruce Street. We'll have Carolyn present.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, we have the notice of intention to demolish that was submitted for 324 Spruce Street that you can see in front of you. It's located on the south side of Spruce Street between Reynolds and Allen Street, just east of the Lutheran Church. The property was listed in 2009 for its craftsman-inspired architecture, and just recently a notice of intention to demolish was submitted, which is why you see it before you today. And along with this application, the owners have submitted a cultural heritage evaluation report as well as a structural assessment. And the owners are proposing a new similar 2-story house on the site and have come to get approval to remove the existing building. And I'll take you through a little bit more of that. So the Cultural Heritage Evaluation Report provided a heritage assessment of the property. You can see it's a lengthy document on around page 104 of your agenda. They provide more details on why they believe the property only meets 1 out of the 9 criteria of Regulation 906. The consultants have noted they believe the property has contextual value because it is important in maintaining the character of the area as a 1.5-story frame house influenced by the Craftsman bungalow architectural style. However, they believe the property does not meet the requirements of the Heritage Act to be designated under Part 4 because it only meets this 1 criteria. And of course, now under Regulation 906, a property must meet 2 out of the 9 criteria to merit designation. A structural assessment document was also submitted along with the application. The owners were looking at undertaking renovations, and there are obviously is an older house. It does need some repairs. The report isn't saying that the house, of course, has to come down immediately, but is saying that it is structurally unstable and does require major structural adjustments. And because of that, many of the materials that are existing on the house would have to be replaced. The Cultural Heritage Valuation Report speaks to the building being influenced by the Craftsman period, and it does have some elements of that style, but it argues that it's not sufficient enough or in any significant way to be a strong representative example of the style. A lot of the original materials have been replaced, or in the beginning it was more of a simple vernacular version of the style and not a strong representative example of the style. So that, along with the structural assessment, understanding that some of the remaining materials would also have to be replaced, I think that also was taken into consideration by the heritage consultants as well. But we do have them here available to answer any questions. So the staff recommendation, we have looked at the report and done our own assessment and gone by the house and agree that the property does not merit the 2 criteria required to designate the property under the Heritage Act. And we are recommending that the property be removed from the Oakville Register of Properties of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest. And we are asking that prior to demolition, the property owner allow for salvage of materials from the house. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions and any specific details the heritage consultants will also be able to help with.
Do we have any questions for Carolyn? Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last night at P&D, we had an item on the agenda for another property on Spruce Street. What's the difference between the two? Are they about the same age, or just wondering how one qualifies and one doesn't?
Yeah. Thank you. Through Madam Chair to the councillor. Yes, correct. There was another Craftsman bungalow that is going through the designation project. It had been identified as a higher priority through our designation project. This one had not been. The main reason being that a lot of the elements, original elements of the building had been either removed or were not there in terms of expressing a strong example of a Craftsman style. The other house retains a lot more features of that style and still in good condition because they're still remaining and haven't been replaced. There was a bit more historical association as well with that one. So yes, from our perspective, there's a difference between the two. So we have recommended destination on the one, and with this one, we are not. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
It does indeed, thanks.
Brenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question on page 15 of the package. The last paragraph. On the 4th line where the sentence starts, "This is because the proposed new house is in keeping." I'm curious if you could give some context to that statement in this report.
I can help, I can ask the consultants to speak to it too, as this is their report, but I think generally what they're saying is it does meet the one criteria in terms of it is the overall style of it being a 1.5 story home is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, but that it in itself, architecturally on its own, does not merit Part 4 designation, but that its general design is in keeping with the general character of the streetscape in the area. So that's why the consultants felt that removing it would not have it would have, I guess they're trying to say it has an impact on the character of the neighborhood, but it's not a district. We're looking at an individual property, so it has to have merit on its own. But they can maybe speak to that as well a little bit further.
Is that okay, Brenda? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. We have 2 delegations available. I think they're on virtual. Ben Daub and Christiane Uchiyama. I don't see them on screen.
Thank you. We haven't prepared a presentation simply because Carolyn's done a wonderful job of addressing all of the items that we would have addressed. So we're happy to answer questions, but appreciate that you've got an agenda and may not want to spend as much time on this item.
Thank you. Would you be able to address the question that Brenda had for Carolyn?
Yeah, I mean, I think Carolyn did a wonderful job of explaining that. Essentially, it fits well into the streetscape, and it's a supporting property within that streetscape. But on its own, it doesn't meet the other criteria.
Okay, thank you. So the understanding is that even though the existing property is being demolished, the new one that will be built in its place will retain the footprint and the massing on the street level. So in context of size and scale, there will be little difference to the existing house that is there now.
That's exactly it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you. Confined, any further questions of the delegations or Carolyn? Bob?
Are there any preliminary designs that you could share with us for the replacement house?
If I'm able to share screens, we can maybe. Oh, no, I'm not able to share screens, unfortunately. I believe in the document that you have on numbered page 91, there's a description of the proposed development, and there are some images in the following pages. I don't have the number within your agenda handy, though.
Thank you, Chris. So through you, Madam Chair, starting on page 12 for the committee member, 112, there are some renderings and then some streetscape drawings showing how it would fit in with the existing streetscape, as well as on page 115. There's a before and after with what's existing and what is proposed to show the difference. So similar in height, a little bit wider, but the same general layout of the house, looking like a 1.5 story with a dormer out front. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Bob, if I may just clarify on page 113, our page 113, as Carolyn said, and 114, 115, the major difference between the existing home and the proposed home are the side elevations, where the existing is a gable and the new is a barn profile. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor McNeese.
Yes, through you, Chair. With the salvaging of materials from the existing house, would they be used as a feature in the new build, or what would we expect from that?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're not requiring that it be reused in the new build. We just request that owners make material available for salvage either for themselves on the property or for others to use on their other heritage properties. So it's not something we can mandate fully in terms of what's to be used where. I'm not sure if the heritage consultants have anything to add about if they're aware of any materials being salvaged by the owners.
There are no plans for any reuse, but we can certainly speak to them about salvage for reuse elsewhere.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? Let's confine the discussion and comments to the board. Any comments on the board? May we have a motion? Bob? Motion to move the staff recommendation? Yes, thank you. So we have a motion from Bob to move the staff recommendation. All in favor? Motion carried. Oh, any opposed? No, motion carried. Now we have The next item, 4.2, notice of intention to designate multiple properties, and that's Carolyn again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have 5 designations for you today. The first is the Woodlands at 1242 Bronte Road, the Crosby House at 135 and 137 Chisholm Street, and the McMichael Farmhouse on Dundas Street West, and the William H. Carson House on 506 Lakeshore Road East. So I'll take you through them. The first is the Woodlands, which is quite a well-known and prominent property in Oakville, located on the west side of Bronte Road, north of the QEW. And I'll take you through the evaluation. So it's a representative example of an evolved stately Gothic revival farmhouse. If you read in the report, there was a fire at one point and some changes to the house, but those were still done well over 100 years ago. So quite a bit of interesting architectural features on the building. Historically, it has a lot of value. It was associated with James White, who was an MPP for Halton. He was a well-known horse breeder across Canada and the United States, a well-known lumber merchant, and he also farmed the property and had the house built. It's also associated with Paul Campbell, who later owned the property and ran a nationally respected orchard on the property, producing a lot of fruits and vegetables, and again, quite well known for his very good produce. Also associated with George S. Atkins, who was nationally recognized for his work in farm radio and who protected the nearby natural area. He was started with the conservation area locally as well, or authority, I should say. And the property also has potential to yield information that contributes to the understanding of pre-colonial Indigenous communities. There are known archaeological potential sites on the property, so that's something that is worth noting and being aware of for the future too, if there was to be any future development on the site. And contextually, it's physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. These include the Bronte White Oak, which originally was part of this property, which is designated on Bronte Road in front of the house, and the nearby woodlots, which were preserved by the White and Atkins families and today remain part of the town's natural heritage system. The second house is the Crosby House. And again, it's one building, but it has always been a semi-detached house. So it encompasses 135 and 137 Chisholm Street. It is a representative example of a vernacular Oakville frame house built with influences from the arts and crafts movement. Historically, it's associated with the theme of the late 19th and early 20th century industrial and residential development of this area, west of 16 Mile Creek. Of course, it had a lot of more modest homes that were built for the working class neighborhood. Contextually, the property is important in defining and supporting and maintaining the character of the area, again defined by these modest working class homes. And it's physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings and contributes to the residential and industrial growth on the west side of 16 Mile Creek. The second one, again, is the same, so I won't go through it all, but this is the north half at 137. Same information here. The next house is the McMichael, or also known as Ravaz Farmhouse in North Oakville. This is 3367 Dundas Street West, just east of Tremaine Road. The property is considered to be a representative example of a vernacular architecture with Edwardian, classical, and Queen Anne revival influences. It's historically associated with the theme of agricultural development in the early 20th century to Trafalgar Township. It remains as an important link to this rural past. Contextually, it's physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. It acts again as an important reminder of the formerly rural landscape in this area that helped contribute to the early development of Trafalgar Township. And lastly, we have the William H. Carson House at 506 Lakeshore Road East, just between Park and Howard Avenue on the south side of the Lakeshore Road. The property is a representative example of an arts and crafts era house. It has influences from the Craftsman, Tudor Revival, and Queen Anne periods. Historically, it's associated with the theme of development of Orchard Beach, which was an early 20th century lakeside residential development in this area. and has associations with William H. Carson. He was one of the well-known and notable Carson family. They had the Carson and Sons planing mill. They built numerous houses around Oakville, and this house would have been built for their family as an example of their work. Contextually, the property is physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. And again, it helps contribute to the understanding of the local community and the early houses along Lakeshore Road East and in Orchard Beach itself. So the staff recommendation is that a notice of intention to designate be issued for these 5 properties. We've been working with the owners for all 5, and at this point, we haven't heard any negative reaction to the designations, but we'll continue to work with the owners to keep, hopefully, positive designations for all 5 of these. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions of Carolyn? None? Okay. Well, it's really nice to see these, to read the research on these 5 properties. And it's a good news story for us to bring these forward today. So all good news all around. Councillor McNeese?
Yes, thank you for these designations through you, Chair. So on 1242 Bronny, so I believe there's a common driveway and then a few other properties next to it, but there's quite a bit of shrubs. You can't really tell what's back there. Are they potentially other heritage properties back there, or do we know?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there is the one at 1326 to the north, the Red Brick House,
Right.
which is already going through a protection and designation process. There are no others here in this little stretch that we have identified as being of heritage value. There was, and I think it was mentioned in the report, there was a historic house that was built by James originally. But it was incorporated into another house in, I believe it was the 90s. We're not sure how much of that house is left. I think it was probably done to avoid dealing with the Conservation Authority. They just incorporated the existing house in the footprint, but it's been basically encapsulated into a contemporary new house. So that was the only structure historically, other than that we knew of in the area that might have some remnants inside, but at this point, I think most of that is gone. So this is what we're looking at protecting.
Okay, and is it the Atkins family still?
Associated with that
Yeah.
property? I'm not aware, I'm not sure
not
with
sure.
that one. It's a separate property.
Okay, or sorry, the one that we're potentially listing, is it?
No, it's newer owners.
Yours?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So may we have a motion to...
Hi, it's Jason
Madam
here.
Chair.
Hello, I've had my hand up, but no one
did
saw
you,
my
Jason?
hand up.
Ah.
Hello, hi.
It's so subtle there, the little hand on the top
I
left
know,
hand.
I know. I'd just like to ask a question pertaining to 3367 Dundas, please. Obviously, I read the report and I've seen. Could you just run, Carolyn? Could you just run through the reasons for the designation of that property under the Act, please?
Yep. Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee member. Yes, the Heritage Consultants did do a report on this as part of the Cultural Heritage Landscape Strategy. So they provided their initial report. Staff have taken that information and done their own assessment as well. So with this one, we believe, again, it meets the 3 of the criteria. I'm just trying to...
You had it on your slide just before that, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can get the slides back
okay.
up.
So Carolyn,
Pages, yeah.
on our page 385, there is the draft of intention to designate, which has the statement of cultural heritage value of interest. Jason,
Yeah.
do you have access to that on page
No,
385?
I do.
Okay.
My question is going to go down a slightly different rabbit hole. That's really why I'm really sort of just wanted that up first. So if that property came through for a request for demolition, once designated, it would then have to come back through us to make an agreement, just as we have just done with Spruce.
Sorry, if it was designated and they came for a demolition?
And they don't have to ask for a demolition at that point.
If it was designated and they came in for a demolition application, we would not likely support that unless there were really obvious structural issues or if there was a fire or something.
Right.
The Spruce Street example is listed, it's not designated, so
Okay. So
that's
it's just a terminology thing.
yeah, so when it's listed, it triggers that requirement to have a cultural heritage assessment report done to determine its cultural heritage value if it merits designation. With this one, we have been working with the owners and their heritage consultants to protect the building. And so from our perspective, the owners at this point are not interested in demolishing the house. They want to see it retained and be incorporated into a new development in the future. Obviously, that area will not remain rural. So there will be a future development. So what we're trying to do through this designation is protect the exterior of the home, of the original home, to be incorporated into some kind of future development. So I think the owners and staff are well aware that this house will likely be picked up or and have a new use and maybe moved within the site, maybe not moved, but would certainly have some kind of new use on the site.
Okay, and I think that's where I was just wanting to understand. I wondered if there was something behind that there is a development upcoming because it's prime development along Dundas there.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, there is no application in front of us now, but this is one where it's a better idea for us to be proactive and designating our resources up in North Oakville prior to development, so that when a development application comes in, we are not having to do that assessment at that time.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. That was a really good explanation. I think it's a really good thing that the town, we are being proactive with this because it creates great opportunities for branding purposes for a new development on the site. And so they don't necessarily have to begin with a clean slate. There is something there. There's something that can be mined from a cultural perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a design aesthetic perspective. There is something already there that's rich in history, and it's a value. So I think we're going along the right path here. So thank you very much. Bob?
Through you, Madam Chair. Do I understand correctly the designation is for the house and not for a cultural landscape?
Correct. Through you, Madam Chair. That's an excellent question, Bob. Because when they had initially assessed it as part of the Cultural Heritage Landscape Strategy, was determined that it was not a CHL. And I should have noted that. So we are not moving forward as a CHL. We're just moving forward with the building itself. Staff will be coming back at some point, likely in 2025, to clear up some of the CHL properties that have gone through this type of process where we've determined it's not a CHL. So just an update for the committee and to council in terms of where we are at in the CHL strategy. So yes, that's correct. With this one, when they initially looked at it, they determined it's not worthy of protection of the whole farmstead. But really, because most of that's gone now, it really is just the house that remains.
Thank you, Bob. The house, Carolyn, just to clarify, it would be the house and a perimeter of land around the house as well?
So through you, Madam Chair, the property itself is always designated. So it will be whatever the lot is that is there today when we designate it, but the only attributes will be the actual house itself. In the future, what we would do is update the designation bylaw to, if it was moved onto a new lot or a new lot was carved around the existing house, we would then just update the bylaw to reflect that new legal description of the land.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Do we have any further questions of Carolyn? Okay, may we have a motion? Or well, we can confine this to the board. Any motion? All right, no question. All right, George moves the staff recommendation that a notice of intention to designate be issued under Section 29, Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act for the following properties as listed in our agenda here: the Woodlands, the Crosby House, both north and south half, the McMichael Farmhouse, and the William Carson House. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Now we have item 5, information item, and is it Kirk? The first one is Heritage Conservation District update here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. It's great to see everybody. So just a quick update on our old Oakville Heritage Conservation District Plan update. We have a revised study plan and guidelines in circulation right now, and commenting period is underway. So if there are some members of the public or members of committee who would like to be pointed in that direction so they can have access to the document, we're happy to share that information. You can reach out to staff here at the town. It's an easy search at oakville.ca as well if you search up the Conservation District Plan update. So you'll find the draft documents there. We're receiving comments as mentioned, and if there are committee members who wish to meet with staff to provide their comments directly in person or by other means, of course, we're more than happy to accommodate that. The next few steps will be to incorporate further revisions based on our stakeholder engagement, and we'll be moving towards a statutory public meeting later this summer, early fall, before council, and coming back to committee here with the draft final guidelines, and then we'll be moving back to Planning and Development Council to adopt a bylaw eventually. So there's 3 more statutory type steps that we'll be taking, and as mentioned, lots of opportunity for engagement along the way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kirk. And as Kirk mentioned, if there are any committee members that have any further questions, please contact staff directly on this one. Item 5.2. Carolyn, I think you're on again.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Not too much to update on this one. We are moving forward. We've got 6 more designations, I think, for you for the July meeting, and that would bring us to over the 50 mark. So doing really well, and our researchers have a lot more research that's already been completed for a number of other properties. So we're in a good spot.
Oh, good. Good to hear, Carolyn. Thank you. And item 5.3, the delegated heritage permits, April to June. I think you're on again.
Yep, nothing to add. Just if anyone has any questions on any of those delegated permits, just reach out to either Sue or myself.
Okay, thank you. May we have a motion to accept the information items? Bob? Bob moves the information items. All in favor? Carried. Motion carried. The date and so I think this concludes our meeting of today. The date and time of our next meeting is Tuesday, July 23rd. I just wanted to say that, just to reiterate that, let's see here what we have. Little reading list here. Any applicant or member of the public, again, wishing to speak further regarding any issues on today's committee agenda may register for the Planning and Development Council at its meeting on Monday, July 8th at 6:30, when the recommendations from today's meeting will go forward for final consideration by council. And I guess we will be adjourned. May we have a motion to adjourn? Brenda? And I guess we're all moving to adjourn. Motion is carried. And just to remember our faithful chair, Drew, who's on vacation in Nanaimo today, I'm going to use his lovely little quote by saying thank you for the gift of your time, everyone, for coming on the committee, and have a wonderful rest of the day and week. Thank you.